Hi, I'm Liz from Book Art Studios in New Zealand, and my Get Messy May prompt, that was a bit of a mouthful. My Get Messy prompt today is mistakes. No, it's not. My prompt is supposed to be one word. Let's see what we can do. There we go. My prompt is mistakes. Now, as you can see, this is such a playful word to work with. And just the very action of doing something like this is designed to remind you or encourage you or inspire you or invite you to work with mistakes in a playful way. Don't be afraid of them. Work with them. Allow them to take you down paths that are really fun and come up with solutions that you might not have even thought about if something hadn't happened that didn't quite go as planned. I'm going to work in my journal and I'll open it to a page where I tried to use a large rubber stamp, but it didn't quite go as planned. So as a result, all I've got is a little bit of it. I have to say I'm not the world's best stamper, but when this happens, instead of saying, oh no, why did that happen? Wish I hadn't done that and I should have known better, and all of those kind of thoughts that we get bombarded with, I tend to laugh and then say, oh gosh, what's it inviting me to do? Where's it taking me? What solutions can I come up with so that I end up with something that's quite unique? And this is where you just look through your stash of paper, see what you've got. I've got a piece out of a French book, which I've just put a little bit of white paint over just to dull it down a little bit, and also because I don't really know what it says. And I've got a piece of, this is called Josh paper, that's Josh, and I've got a little bit of shipping chart. This has been dipped in coffee. This one hasn't, just so you can see the difference. I literally just about dye everything in coffee all the time. And also dress pattern paper, which, have I got some? Here we go. Dress pattern paper. I'm just going to play with a few bits of paper and see what we can do. Just, let's see. Let's get the first one that comes to hand. And that is the shipping chart paper. I'm just inking up off camera, and I'm going to put the stamp here onto the shipping chart paper. You can of course use any papers out. You could use old atlases, maps. If you go to a visitor centre, often they've got maps, and you can make them look fairly old if you want to as well. So here we go. Can you see this? I do love this stamp. It's one of my favourite stamps. So what we can do is just match it up and do a kind of a repair job, I suppose. I'm just going to fold it and use a steak knife. What else do you want to use a steak knife for? Now I've got a little bit of a rough edge there, and I like that. If you don't want a rough edge, then just use a ruler, metal ruler, and a knife. So now we can take this part and just line it up, and then you simply glue it on. And I think this makes a really charming addition to any journal page, and then you can carry on journaling in any way you like. But before I stick that on, or even if I don't even know if I'm going to stick that on yet, I just want to try some of this paper. So I actually inked it up a little bit earlier, but what I really love about this is this kind of golden bit here, and it really makes the stamp pop. So I'm just going to, I might even go a little bit further over than I need to be, because I don't necessarily want to lose that. And don't forget, you get these little extra bits which can be used somewhere else. This time I'll just use the other side of the knife so I get a slightly softer edge, and then line it up. Oh, that is so gorgeous. That is so utterly gorgeous. Look at that. The paper that you use to stamp on can work wonders for journaling. It really can. And also the fact that you've got sort of almost like two levels. You've got this one that's directly on the page, then you've got this one that's on a piece of paper, and that just gives it a really nice contrast. Let's try it with this paper. Now the thing about working with paper that's come out of a novel or has already got writing on, sometimes it's a little bit too strong. So remember I said I put some white paint on, but it's still kind of popping out. I've got some literally dying, you know, they're almost dead stamp pads, and this is where I honestly, you know what we're like, we hardly throw anything away, do we? But these kind of stamp pads are really good if you just want to dull your pages down a little bit, because there's still enough ink left in them, but not too much that it's just going to be sort of blobs of ink. And you could even use, well, you can use as many colours as you like, obviously. Just put a little bit in there. All right, so now I'll put the stamp on and we'll see what that looks like as well. And because I've made this mistake, it doesn't have to just be about what I do on this side. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So we stamp our piece of paper that's come out of a novel with the French writing on. Here we go. And now what I could actually do, I mean, this is just beautiful. This edge is absolutely beautiful. So if I wanted to, I could just have it, you know, I could sew it on there. I could stick it on there. I could have it as a pocket. I could actually cut this out, stick it on. Could do many things to it. Now I've forgotten what I was actually going. Oh yes, I know. I know what I was going to do. I'm just going to rip this and just kind of cobble it back together, but leaving the tiniest little gap like that. And over here, because I really like this, I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to glue this one down because I really want you to see what that looks like. Oops. This is really beautiful. And what happens is when you make a mistake like this and you start looking for solutions, then that's when the ideas come in. The very act of actually doing something and figuring out is the very thing that gets those creative juices going. And you'll notice here that this sticks off the end of the journal. I like that. I'm more than happy with it. If you don't like that, then don't do it. You must always create at your own level of comfort. If, you know, if something feels too rustic or raw or scrappy or whatever words you want to use, then that just means that's not your style. There's nothing wrong with using scissors. There's nothing wrong with being neat. There's nothing wrong with wanting straight lines and things like that. Absolutely not. I tend to work really quickly and cover up mistakes quickly, or work with mistakes and then move on. So I'm just going to give that a little gap. And it's almost gone a little abstract. And then I'd leave that to dry. Working with your mistakes instead of against your mistakes in terms of fighting with them is a much nicer way to work. And it starts then you can think, oh, what's coming, what's the page that's coming before, what's the page that's coming after, how can I interact with this to make it more interesting and take the levels into the next page. So it really does inspire thoughts and ideas. And of course you end up with all this little parcel of goodies that you can use elsewhere as well. So let's just kind of create an upsie. I never use that word, but I'm sure you know what I mean. So imagine that you're working with a book and something happens, it gets ripped, and you think, oh, what can I do? How can I fix this? Sometimes I will just rip the paper off and actually, I will. So sometimes I'll just do that. And then I'll stick something really interesting underneath it. And carrying on with this theme, I could even stamp on here so that it kind of marries up. Let's try that and see whether it works. Or stick paper on it. So we don't want the stamp to go onto the second page. Let's do this. Oh, look at that. And now you can stick this on here. What's really lovely about making journals and working with the pages on the inside is that it starts to tell a story and it takes you on an adventure. And mistakes are your best friends for doing that. If you're always working in a way where everything has to be perfect and just so, that's fine if that's where you're at. But if you want to start pushing through that, then embrace your mistakes, because they'll surprise you and delight you. And then you think, wow, did I really do that? And yes, you did, because you had the courage to listen to what the journal or what the book was trying to tell you. See? How playful is that? And then I'll just go back to my original idea, which was if you have a little tear like that, and this is where you can use these pieces up as well. Or obviously you don't have to stick with the same stamp. I'm just doing this to be consistent. But you could use a piece of coloured paper. You could use any kind of paper scraps you've got lying around that will be fun to use. All we're going to do is just lay this on here and flick it over to the other side. There we go. So you've got a so-called mistake or mistakes here and here. And just see how, and look at this now as well. Don't forget, your story goes backwards as well as forwards, and that's how playful it can be. And then the last thing I just wanted to show you is you can always use some masking tape. Masking tape is really good for covering up or working with mistakes. So I'll ink up my large stamp again and put it on, just put it onto the tape. Now don't forget the tape is a little bit shiny, so you're not going to necessarily get a really crisp finish. But if I go back in here and just find a space. Oh, I've worked so much in this journal. It's upside down, it's back to front. Let's have a look. I think that I'll just do the same thing again and say, oh, I've ripped a page. If you stamp on like this and you have a series of these just handy, then they can go in your journal. And if you don't like this big white bit, then you can just get rid of it. And if you want to, you can get another one and put it on here. There you go. And that's how you can use masking tape. You could also, you see, this is where I need to stop because I start going down a path of exploration just from one mistake. You could use the tape and add it at any point as well. I think it's easier to explain on here. You've got your stamp and you can add it to add extra just something a little bit different. Let's match that up. There you go. Just play and experiment, and if you don't like it, just tear off little bits of what you were playing with and have them as details to add in your journals elsewhere. So have fun. As long as you're having fun, that's all that counts, with enjoying your mistakes.